Okay.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Thank you for joining us for the 15th Annual Massachusetts Independent Comics Expo. Since 2010, MICE has grown into the largest independent comics show in New England.
Woo! Yay!
And thank all of you for helping to make that happen. I'm Dan Mazur, co-founder of MICE, and welcoming you to MICE's, I think, 6th Annual Comics Visual Literacy Panel. This panel is brought to you by the Boston Comics Roundtable. The Boston Comics Roundtable, oh, look at what I've done here. I left the stupid survey sign up. That's more like it. The Boston Comics Roundtable is a community of comics creators. We've been meeting weekly since 2006, welcoming all cartoonists of any level, from beginner to professional. And you can learn more at bostoncomics.com. So if you're a cartoonist or want to be and you're seeking community, I strongly encourage you to reach out to BCR. We also want to thank our hosts, Boston University, without whom, well, we'd be sitting out there trying to do this. It would be very difficult.
Different vibe, definitely.
They give us great spaces and lots of support, and especially BU's Visual Narrative graduate program. Visual Narrative is what you have to say if you want to have a graduate program where you teach comics. This program is run by another great cartoonist and friend of MICE, Joel Christian Gill. And as soon as he got the program off the ground 3 years ago, he invited MICE to come in here, and this is where we've been ever since. MICE is also produced by BCAF, the Boston Comic Arts Foundation, an education-based comic advocacy nonprofit. Discover more amazing comics events at bostoncomicarts.org. If you like MICE, consider supporting us. Donations can be made at the Welcome Desk and online at miceexpo.org. And if you really like MICE, you can sponsor us. Sponsorship opportunities are available, and for more info, please reach out to MICE at bostoncomicarts.org. And now for the main event. Normally I'd be introducing the moderator, but I am the moderator.
Woo!
And this is Comics Visual Literacy. So I'm Dan Mazur, as I said, co-founder of MICE. I'm also a cartoonist, and I love moderating this panel. We've done it 6 years in a row. This is the 3rd year that I've moderated, and we can repeat it ad infinitum because it's like a high-concept panel that you can put any cartoonist into, and you can learn new and different things from each artist every time. This year we have 4 superb comics creators. Each will share a page of their own work and a page by an artist they admire or are inspired by, or both. And then, in the words of Benjamin Wilgus, who moderated the first 3 years of the panel, we will talk about comics like giant nerds in an enormous amount of depth, which I'm assuming is why you are here, why you are all here.
That does sound like something I would say.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's you.
So the idea of comics visual literacy is to cultivate ways of thinking and talking about comics that are very specific to this art form. And we try to do it by focusing, in this case, it's not the only way you'd have to do it, on the unit of the comics page, because that's a unit of visual communication and expression that is very unique to comics. So before I introduce the artist, I'd just like to quickly introduce, as an example, what I think is a nice bit of comic-specific terminology that I think will be fun to talk about before looking at the work that these 4 cartoonists chose. This is a way of categorizing comics page layouts, which was formulated by a very good Belgian comics writer named Benoit Peters. The most popular theorist in English of the way comics work is probably Scott McCloud, who's mostly talking about panel transitions. But Peters has a different approach. He talks about 4 different types of page layouts, 4 categories. I'm only going to talk about 3 of them because the 4th is very arcane and experimental. So first there's what he calls the conventional layout, in which all the panels on a page are the same size and shape. This is very common, especially in the classic grid, whether it's 6, 8 panels, or 9, or whatever. You just choose your regular layout and tell your story in it. And second is called rhetorical, and it means that the shapes and sizes of the panels are flexible, determined by the needs of the story as you're telling it. And this is probably the most common way of laying out a comics page, and it can be simple as taking a grid and varying it, making some panels wider or taller to accommodate what it is that you want to show and how you want to show it, or it can be crazy page layouts with wild panel shapes that are expressive in their own right. And finally, there is what Peters calls a decorative page layout, which is fairly unusual, but you do see it. And this is where the artist chooses an overall page design. It can be very ornate or it can be very simple, often but not always involving symmetry, almost like you architecturally design the page as a setting for your storytelling. So here are some further examples of the conventional page layout. The classic 6-panel grid by Jack Kirby, Dave Gibbons and Alan Moore's Watchmen 9-panel grid, and another 9-panel page from a graphic novel called Sky and Stereo by Mardu. And then we go to the rhetorical page layout. So here's another Kirby page, and really the only variation from the grid is widening that middle panel so to allow that figure and the big long gun to have their dramatic impact. Then there's a page by Shotaro Ishinomori, very classic manga layout, using the first, it reads right to the left, the first panel making it full length to show off the figure, the action of the bowling, letting the ball and the figure go off the both through the panel and off the page, and then returning to not quite uniform set of smaller panels for dialogue afterwards. And then this is a crazy but still in that category of rhetorical page by Boston's own Raoul III, where really the panel shapes are like just part of the action of the page itself, just slamming you across the spread. And then here are some of the decorative page layouts by 3 of the greats, all very symmetrical. Winsor McKay, Little Nemo, Arzak by Mobius, and George Herman's Crazy Cat. Of course, like any system of categories in the arts, it will totally fall apart if you try to apply it too strictly. The definitions get blurred or overlap. Pages can be and often are a little of this and a little of that, and there are many other ways of many other aspects of a comic other than just the shapes and sizes of the panel. But I like it. It's very comic specific, and it's a simple way of organizing thoughts and vocabulary about page layouts. Not like it's rules that artists have to follow, but it sort of helps to focus on what decisions the artists made when they were laying out the page. So I think it may be useful, it may be fun to bring that up and looking at the pages we're going to look at, or not, but there it is. So let's move on and meet the artists. Gideon Kendall. Gideon Kendall is the Eisner-winning, Ringo Award-nominated, and Reuben Award-nominated artist of Harvey Kurtzman's Marley's Ghost from Ablaze / Comixology, Eric Powell's Lester of the Lesser Gods from Dark Horse, and Mega Ghost, also from Dark Horse or Dark Horse Albatross Funny Books. He's also the creator of the sci-fi comic What's It from Heavy Metal, speaking of Mobius, and he is the creator of the autobio anthology Wait, It Gets Worse with Doug Latino. His work has been featured in Heavy Metal, Full Bleed, Lab, and Mad Magazine. Gideon teaches inking and drawing at the School of Visual Arts in New York City and lives in Brooklyn with his wife and favorite artist, Julie Pepito, and their son, Milo. Next we have, Beth Hetland. Out of order. Beth Hetland is a cartoonist and teacher. Her comic works include Fugue, Cycles, and Half Asleep, and her most recent graphic novel, Tender, published by Fantagraphics, was nominated for a Harvey Award as Best Book of 2024. That's this year.
It's right now.
Yeah. Beth is a professor, an adjunct professor at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, where she teaches several comics and comics-adjacent courses. She holds an MFA from the Center for Cartoon Studies and BFA from the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. Who's next?
All right, I'm going to do 2 claps. That's too many.
Ben Wilgus. Benjamin Wilgus, excuse me. Besides having been the original moderator of Comics Visual Literacy, and it's very exciting to have them here as a panelist after all these years, Benjamin Wilgus is a cartoonist and comics writer based in Brooklyn, New York. His previous work includes Cronin, a graphic novel duology, The Mars Challenge, illustrated by Wyatt Yates, and Grace Needs Space, illustrated by Rhea Abrego. He's currently at work on Play Real Fast, a graphic novel about trans kids and video game speedrunning, which will be illustrated by Eric Lied, or Lied? Which one?
I think it's Lied.
Lied, and published by Random House Graphic. Benjamin Wilgus. And finally, Arielle Jovellanos. A freelance illustrator, writer, cartoonist, and occasional editor and educator from New York. Her comic works include Black Star, Evil Thing, a villain's graphic novel, Girl Taking Over, a Lois Lane story, and her recent mini-comic, Just a Spell. She contributed to the 2016 Eisner nominee for Best Digital Comic Fresh Romance and won the UK's 2024 Tripwire Award for Best New Talent. She would also like a cat. If anyone here has had a litter recently, come up afterwards. So now we will go through this exciting process. First, we will look at the page that the artist chose that from another artist that they think is great or interesting or inspiring, or all three, and then on to their own work. And I will ask each panelist to talk about the pages that they've chosen, but also I would hope that the other three will sort of pipe in with their own reactions. It means a lot of neck craning, unfortunately, because the screens in here are very, very close. But so first up, let's see. I don't think this page needs any introduction. This is from Gideon Kendall. Gideon.
Yes.
Tell us why you have chosen this Calvin and Hobbes as a sample.
All right. Well, when I started looking for a page to show, I started looking through a lot of books that I liked, and I realized that there were very few pages in graphic novels or comic books that told enough of a story in one page that where it seemed to make sense to show it. That often, especially now in graphic novels and comics, the stories are time is so stretched out that often not a whole lot happens on a page. So I eventually decided to use a Calvin and Hobbes Sunday strip because the whole story is told on that single page, and his layouts are so inventive and the humor is so well distributed across the writing and the drawing that I thought that would be a good way to go. First, I think it's important to mention, I guess, the elephant in the room, that if you've read Calvin and Hobbes, you know that he has no problem careening down a mountain on a sled or doing any number of very dangerous things. Oh, wait a minute, this is the other one. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so well, I guess this applies here too. Actually, no, that point doesn't apply. But
I
what
would say
love-
that the car flying is pretty dangerous.
Yeah, totally.
Right, but the other one where he's going down the slide, it's like he's afraid to go down a slide, and I thought, well, okay, he doesn't let the characteristics get in the way of a good gag, but that's a different strip. So let's talk about this one. What I love about this story-wise, it's both a visual fantasy and a character fantasy, in that, well, the visual fantasy is obvious, but the character fantasy is a little bit more subtle, and it's the way that his dad just buys into it and is okay with it. And as much of it is the fantasy of, wow, wouldn't it be fun to drive really fast and go up in the sky? The other part of the fantasy is, wouldn't it be great if my dad stopped being such a stick in the mud and actually went along with my ideas? And I have a teenage son, so it gave me a little bit of empathy towards my son when I rediscovered how beautiful this page is. You'll see in my page of my own work, my three favorite things about comics are, one, just the joy of drawing. Two is facial expressions and body language and using your characters as actors. And then the third one is playing with time and space. And Bill Watterson was a master of playing with time and space. Not so much time in this one, but his ability to understand what the best camera angle is and what the best distance to choose and how to use what I call, when I try to teach perspective, and I try to move beyond the idea of linear perspective to teach students how to create space in a picture using scale, making the big thing small and the small thing big so you understand where everything in the picture is. So if you notice, as the car goes further and further up, we know we're up in the air here. You can see the perspective on the road and the size of the cars, and then this wonderful, simple indication that any of us who've been up in an airplane, we understand that. He's doing this far-fetched, hilarious thing, and he's doing it with just the right amount of lines for you to understand exactly where everything is. And without knowing exactly where everything is, the joke and the magic of it wouldn't work.
But very economical. Like, I love a newspaper cartoonist who knows how to spend his time. It's like...
Yeah, and I, as someone who tends to overwork almost everything that I draw, I love looking at Bill Watterson. Well, it makes me feel bad, but it's also good to look at and try to remind myself, if you make the right lines, you don't need to make a million lines.
That's such a permission slip right now.
Yep.
Like, just to be like, all right, 5 lines, as long as it's clear.
As long as
we
they're
got
the
it.
right ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cartooning. As
Yeah.
long as people
Totally.
understand what you're doing, it's fine.
Right.
Totally.
But it's that understanding of of everything being the right size,
Yeah.
so that you know where you are.
So what really, I didn't talk about this in my bio because I got self-conscious, but I also do editorial work. And what really strikes me about this actually from that perspective is that either he wasn't getting edited at this point or his editor stayed out of his way. Because I can see the note in that first line of somebody being like, I just wanted to be a little more clear about when we transition out of reality here. I can, because it's very, if you're using your common sense, you can tell that okay, I'll pull over is maybe something he actually said, but it's a little bit of a bleed between the actual conversation they had in the car, and then at the end the sigh is obviously grounding you back in reality.
Right.
But it's a little ambiguous there where exactly the handoff is happening in that first line.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I like that, and I think it is any person reading this comprehends what they're looking at, but I think there's a lot of people there's a lot of over-editing that happens, especially when you get into a big committee with a lot of approvals in modern comics, where a lot of people wouldn't be allowed to have this page be this way, and I really like it.
I'm pretty sure he was allowed to do whatever the heck he wanted.
Yeah,
at this
which
point,
is
right?
beautiful. I love
Yeah.
that for him.
Also, look at the way he changes perspective, but in the first 3 panels, that's boring stuff in those first 3 panels. It's just people in a car, and then some movement of where people are sitting. That's boring stuff. But look at the choice of the camera angles. It makes that so interesting, and it just moves you perfectly. Then things get wild and crazy, and Watterson draws the boring parts and the fun parts equally well.
And he spent his time really well. Like, he drew this car and all this crazy perspective because it was worth the time.
Right.
Then he's like, whatever, fields.
Yeah.
You know what a field is. It's fine.
I also love the book ending of the first panel and the last panel. Not
Oh, I
only
didn't
are
even
they
notice
the same perspective,
Oh my
but the
God.
balloon color's the same,
Oh, that's
indicating
clever.
that's the continuation of the conversation of,
My God,
I don't
you're a
like to go
genius.
much faster than this. How much longer now? I told you we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah.
And I think that that's such a beautiful and very quick, very efficient, very thoughtful way of like starting and ending, like you said, fitting the whole thing on a single page and a single, like, even half page, right, of how much space this takes up.
That is so awesome.
There's your transition.
Yeah, absolutely.
Editing accomplished. Okay, we could spend probably another hour on it, but but we got to move through to some other good stuff. And here is a page by Gideon Kendall
Gorgeous.
from Harvey
Thank you.
Kurtzman's Marley's Ghost.
Yes.
So
this is from Marley's Ghost. Since we spent a lot of time on that one, just really quickly, like I said, my 3 favorite things are just drawing, working with facial expressions and body language, and then playing with time and space when given the opportunity, and the problem solving that you have to do. In this case, this is the part in the story where they're playing a game at this Christmas party, and it's all this back and forth. People are asking questions, and the guy has to keep responding. And I was like, well, if I do this normally, it would take several pages, and I'd have to keep showing him basically responding to everyone's questions. And I mess around with this page for a long time till I came up with this idea of placing him in the middle. So I guess this is somewhere kind of a decorative page, but also almost whatever the first kind was.
it's all
but
3.
I was
This is
just
where the
very
system
happy
completely
to,
falls apart.
arrive at that solution of placing him in the middle so that he could respond to everyone's questions more efficiently. And then I was working with Josh O'Neill, and we were fine-tuning the script, and he suggested that Scrooge kind of move around in the background, criticizing everyone as it goes along. And once that fell into place, I just felt like we got it. We got this page.
So, like, really briefly, a couple things I really like about this. I really like how you've popped out that central panel to like help bring it like visually outside of time a little bit. So you're like get that signaling that this panel is different
Right.
than the other panels really
Yeah.
immediately. I also really like the lettering here. I feel like lettering is like an afterthought in a lot of comics. And I feel like you're very smart in how you've laid out all these panels where like each panel is very clear, but you're still keeping that central panel. Like it's difficult to lay out a page like this, and I think it's very clean looking and very, very readable while being very high concept, which is very cool.
Thanks. I have a tendency, I love overlapping panels, and I think I do it too much sometimes, but this was a place where
It really
made
works.
sense.
Yeah. It's like floating over the other ones.
It's also incredibly smart that the dialogue of the guessing game, both with the people who are flesh and blood and then Scrooge, who at this point is an apparition, like is working within, like, does it live in a zoo? No. But also, a tiger? No. Right? Like, you can read those in multiple orders simultaneously, really utilizing the simultaneity of a page to say, like, Scrooge is responding while this person is responding, and even though comics has to be read in a linear fashion most of the time, like, you're able to really juggle both of those responses and the way that that's laid out in a super smart way, rather than constant, like, this head, this head, this head, this head of, like, a constant conversation back and forth, which would be really tedious, I think, as a
Yeah.
creator.
Yeah, with my first layouts of this sequence were very tedious, and it wasn't working.
Yeah.
I also love the way the tails of the word balloons are forming almost like a kind of a burst around his head. It has that same effect
Oh, yeah.
as like the burst.
It emphasizes that he's the center of attention. Like everything's literally pointing at him. It's very
Yeah.
cool.
And just that expression works so well with all of these lines of dialogue.
Yeah.
Is so funny of like, hey, I should say not. Like, it's so good.
Quick word on facial expression. A book that really changed my life and made my work a lot better was The Artist's Guide to Facial Expression by Gary Fagan. It's an amazing book. The art in the book isn't really comics art, but what you can learn from that book in terms of how to make your characters' emotions like exact and exactly what you want, it really changed my work for the better. So I recommend that book.
I also really want to point out that just keeping Scrooge in mind, like top of mind throughout this, like it sets up the punchline, does it not? So then that way, you're really kind of, that lets it pay off more, that you see him being like, oh wow, like these people don't know anything, blah blah blah, in the back. And I think like he's the second repeating motif, basically. Like he's the second main character of this spread, basically. And you've done that in such a way where you did not have to put the center figure in every panel multiple times to remind us that he's the main character.
Right.
But to allow Scrooge to be the second main character, you use a different method, which is repeating him throughout the other panels.
Right, and he's the butt of the joke, but he's such a jerk that he's also finds everyone else there to be a joke as well. So
Funny. Okay, again, we could stay, but we have to move on. And let's see what Beth Hetland has in store for us. Beth, you chose this spread.
Yeah.
Tell us what inspired you about it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, everybody else. I'm cheating a little. I picked a spread from a book and a spread of my own. Because I think in spreads oftentimes. And so this is from Charles Burns' Black Hole. And in this, I would say this kind of sits as like an intersection between decorative and rhetoric, I would say, or rhetorical that Dan outlined. In particular, again, we're looking at some symmetry between the spread of the character Keith, whose eyes are in the top left and then eyes in the bottom left. And he's in science class or in biology class dissecting a frog. And he's about to pass out because he's grossed out by it, and also he seems to have this kind of like weird premonition. It's very early on in the book. This is in the first issue or the first chapter, and inside of these really narrow 4 panels, we get to see kind of this what I call with my students visual rhyming, where we're looking at the incision of the frog, which mimics the incision on this foot, which mimics the incision on the back of this woman, which mimics the vaginal entrance underneath this hand here, right? Like this is what we're seeing. And then we get these concentric circles where we get these little tiny inklings of what is going to happen in this book later on as like a very small nod, sleight of hand, as well as like a preview of the fact that this book is going to get kind of weird and spooky and have like dreams and snakes and drugs and guns and like violence and all of this as it's like being flashed before this character to really create like an atmosphere and ambiance, as well as like playing with, again, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say it, the simultaneity of the page of we're absorbing all this information at the same time, just like the character Keith. And it's like really flashing in, but also kind of tunneling and like expanding out, depending on how you're looking at it. And I love this book.
Yeah, it really accelerates and kind of captures nausea.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's this one that I picked. Yeah. We're just dumbstruck.
No, I like
I'm just looking at it.
It does.
I do like that it has the circles on the lower left series of panels. Like I think that the symmetry of it, but not complete, is like very, like as you say, tying these all these moments together and making them feel sort of simultaneous at the same time is great.
Yeah, and the background you're talking about, Benjamin?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like these.
Yeah.
And the symmetry of the faces being at the top of the first one and the bottom of the next one, and they're almost the same, but the eyes, you can tell that he's going from being shocked by what he's looking at to then nearly passing out, but all he really had to change was the eyeballs.
And also it's like slightly slanted as on the second one.
Oh, right, he's like he's
Yeah.
gonna fall over, yeah.
Yeah, like, and also the eyes giving us directionality of reminding us to like look down on the page, and then when we get to the bottom of the right-hand page to look up. I also think about this because it's a spread, right? These are facing pages, so you're reading them and absorbing them at the same time. Very quickly could skip or, absorb the text that's in between them and still understand what's going on without having to like really belabor the point.
Also, honestly, just that he's a little sweaty you know?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that it could have just been the eyes, but he's also a little sweaty.
Yeah.
You know, it adds to it, too.
Well, he's a teen, and there's a frog, and like he's thinking about sex. I don't know. It's just a little spicy.
There are
Yeah.
2 extra drops of sweat in the last panel.
2
Oh
extra.
no, not counting the forehead, the and white on black ones. So a little sweaty. It's also that he puts the vertical gutters in that top circular thing on the second page. It's like they're not. That's really a choice to continue that symmetry and that sort of the background circles coming to the foregrounds in the exact same layout. It always interests me when people put, slice up an image like that when it's not moving across time.
Yeah,
Also-
I love that. Sorry.
It's a subtle, unusual choice to have the narration boxes not inside one of the picture frames. They're in the gutter, which I'm not sure how often I've ever seen that, but it makes so much more sense than if they were over. Because which panel would you put them over? That's
Right.
where they're supposed to be. But
I don't think you want to disrupt it
yeah.
at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
And I also think it kind of places an emphasis on it and just lets that stand. And maybe you can pause for a second to process the text.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you, Charles Burns, and hello, Beth
Oh, yes.
Hetland.
Ooh.
Sorry, and not sorry, everyone. If you don't know Charles Burns' work, this page is going to be gross for you. But if you do, hopefully you're not too unexpected. So this is a spread of pages from my book Tender, which is a psychological thriller and body horror about this woman, Carol Ann. And throughout the book, there are a couple of different dream sequences that I cut to. In the dream sequences, there is this 3x4 grid, but this is vastly different than the grid and the approach to paneling that the other pages have. In addition, this is where a lot of the pops of color start to emerge until they start seeping into the rest of the work. So seeing the similarities to me and inspiration with Black Hole in particular, looking at images that cross the panels using what Scott McCloud calls the polyptics, where you're not moving through space, but you're showing one image that is broken up by gutters or panel lines to indicate one giant image. So seeing this bottom right one with the circle, and then the bottom middle left, bottom right, both of these doing that, as well as playing with the simultaneity to say there are sequences that are chronological but then jumbled up in the way that a dream would be, or playing with the logic of the way that I read this versus the way that somebody else reads this. Is you could read this all the way across the top and read all of those in a row, or you could read each page, or you could jump around, you could follow the color story, you could follow the visual motifs, and again, thinking about rhyming or logic of things like peeling, cracking, emerging, gestating, and playing with all of those as themes to help guide what I'm constructing on the page.
Yeah, it was really striking to me that in your reality pages, you have a more flexible, loose, flowy layouts, and in the dreams, you get really tight with the grid, and it's just what's happening in there. I mean, how was that just an instinctive decision, or was there what was the thought process?
Part of it was instinctual, and the other part was because the content of the dreams is flowy and loose, I wanted their structure to be more rigid versus the content of a more flowy, loose story. I wanted the story, which is a lot more straightforward. I wanted those panels to be a little bit more mimicking that, and to give a clear definition of content and delivery method versus in waking reality versus sleeping. Yeah, or internal space.
Yeah,
I
it
guess.
feels more like reality because of some comics conventions where you don't have a tight grid and you don't even have gutters.
Yeah, no gutters on this one. Yeah, don't need them.
Sorry, I'm just really stuck on the finger.
Yeah,
my
sorry.
God. It's just so interesting where it's like a mix of there's you jumping from image to image in a way that does not like exactly like correlate immediately for the reader, but then you like the finger is sort of this moment where you linger
Yeah,
on the finger.
linger finger. Yeah, for sure.
Where it's like there just 4 times, and just I always think about the real estate of a page and how like maybe like the bigger something is or like the more repetitive something is, I'm like, okay, they really want me to like focus on this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so interesting how like in forcing us to focus on this, like my like nausea for that moment, like you have caused me to feel things just from a
Thank
picture.
you. Thank
and
you.
I think at its heart, to be able to do that in a comic is like, that's why we're here, right? And
Yeah.
that's why I'm probably just going to be thinking about that.
Thank you. Thanks.
Also, I just really like the way you've used color to like anchor the different parts of the page and like control how the eye is moving around. It's very interesting that the most like visually disturbing image on this page also has the least amount of this very popping magenta, like a little bit of it, but it's interesting. Like there's some of the chillest parts are the most like color intense,
Yep.
and some of the most content intense things are like in this much more muted yellow. It's just interesting. You
Yeah.
made some interesting choices here.
Thank you. I'm glad you bring that up, because in the book throughout, I'm trying to get the reader to oscillate between like feeling tense and the release or the build of that tension. And so with that, I'm training you to be aware of the color palette I'm using. Right before this happens, there's like the first pop of color in reality where they're just eating dinner and she cuts open her steak and it's like a raw steak, so you get that pink. And then here I'm like training you to think about the pink as insides. I'm thinking about like, what does it look like in light? What does it look like in this tiny little glimpse inside the finger? And then also like a cracking wall and an emerging cicada, and thinking about what does your inside look like as like this subcurrent that then flows through the rest of the book, that I can either pull on as part of my visual language or not use, or use as a distraction for you. So thank you.
It feels very intentional. Yeah.
Thanks.
Also, in regard to the color, it doesn't appear that there's any actual black.
Nope.
And is there in the rest of the book when
Nope.
we're not? Okay, so that's
No black.
Wow.
Yeah, the main line art is this like eggplant color,
Right.
and then there's one other purple that shows up that's not on here. That's kind of like a more fuchsia purple, but this is the entire color palette, and reality is more of just the eggplant. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And unfortunately, again, we have to
Having a nice
tear
time.
ourselves away. We have to peel ourselves away from this page. And on to
yeah.
Ben Wilgus's first choice.
So this is obviously a lot simpler a page, but I really, really love Otava's work. This is from The Silent Lord, which is the third book in the Letters for Lucardo series. And what I really like about this page, this is pretty early in the book. This is minor spoilers for Letters for Lucardo. I apologize. This character has just is in the process of being turned into a vampire, basically, which happens pretty early in the book. And he's going to be very haunted by, there's realities to this that he didn't really have access to up until now. Like his boyfriend, who is a vampire, has been kind of deliberately hiding what it is like the lived experience of vampirism in this series, which involves being essentially haunted by the Silent Lord, who is like who grants them this power. And what's important here is that the Silent Lord is an ancient, unknowable kind of outside of like very inhuman. And what I like is this is the first time you meet this concept and character. And not only is it like drawn in this very different style and it's very like kind of disembodied head. But I really love the way Otava uses lettering here. I've never seen anybody letter a character like this, and it's like immediately like wrong.
Put the lettering in the mouth.
The lettering in the mouth. It's both like very clear, like you understand it immediately, like you comprehend it, but it is like foundationally like wrong feeling from like a comics literacy way. And this is the first time you see this character, and you're like, oh, there is something wrong here. And he's both the only character who's lettered this way in the whole book. So you're you're introduced to this character, you're immediately like, something is off here, and also like he is fundamentally different than every other person in this book.
It kind of implies that he probably sounds like
and it gives you a feeling for the voice.
Yeah, like he's swallowing his words or something, or
And also just from like a more straightforward way, the way he's like looming over Edward here, and like the way that Edward is like kind of flinching away, but also very clearly unable to actually flinch away. I just think there's like, for how simple this page is, I feel like it's telling you a lot about this situation really efficiently. And I just think Otava's such an interesting cartoonist. There's other pages in this book where he uses oil pastels to like kind of give that sort of timelessness to like people's memory and whatnot. Really interesting book. But anyway, it's a pretty straightforward page, but I feel like lettering is very underappreciated in comics, and this was just, it really stuck with me when I turned the page on this the first time.
But even in the simplicity of the creature being just a little closer in this panel, it really just gives you this sense of like him coming closer, even as like the lettering is larger too. It really does a lot with what you call simple. But I think there's so many choices.
It just puts you into Edward's subjective experience of this like entity like very efficiently in a way that I really like a lot.
I love thinking about like what this would feel like to read in the book and feel like the closeness of like the book format, or like if it's an e-reader, like the closeness of like the intimacy of reading, and like thinking about the like sonic experience of this voice, like very like guttural like effects applied, or like very deep in my mind, and then like the closeness of it getting to my face and like pressing in, and like the black kind of like smothering the other character a little bit, or it taking over. Just very cool, and like almost illuminated with the white line art.
And I feel like when you're thinking about making a graphic novel, which as Gideon says, like it tends to be a little slower in like the pace than like for instance like strip comics are. I really like thinking about like if you're going to do something really striking, thinking very intentionally about like when you're going to do this, because this is the 3 books into the series, and we have never encountered this visual style before. No other pages look like this until this sequence where Edward is experiencing this transformation, and like it's like you along with him, like you think you understand how this works, and you think you know what being a cool sexy vampire is, and then all of a sudden he's like kind of semi-involuntarily thrust in the situation, and like you literally turn the page, you're like, oh no, this is not what I thought this was going to be like at all. And Otava like saved this up for 3 books to get to this moment, and it's such a cool which is such a great experience to have drawn hundreds of pages of a comic and be like, and now I get to do the part where the thing happens.
I have one question though.
Yeah.
So that's awesome, but what happens if he's talking while he's walking away? I bring that up not to be difficult, but because there's this thing that happens when you come up with a cool, unusual
it's just very
thing to do in a story, and then you realize, there's going to be certain situations. Like I thought of this because of the first panel, feels to me like the artist is struggling. Well, what happens when this demon is in 3/4 view? But that doesn't. I mean, it works, but it doesn't work as well as in the bottom panels.
It's interesting when they transition away from this view, like he ends up kind of shifting it a little bit, but it's like this slaps you in the face, and then it does like other, like a little bit less immediately striking, but kind of a little bit like more just sort of. It's different. I don't have the pages on me right now, but yeah, you're right. And it's you can only do this for a little bit. And
Right.
but this sequence only lasts a few pages, and he clearly planned those pages to be able to like have it work, which is very smart.
It's almost like an establishing shot where you're like mentally filling in, like once you've heard and seen this application, then
Yeah.
that plants the seed for like how you should think about this character.
Yeah.
But it is an interesting challenge too.
It's fun, yeah. And you mostly experience him sparingly through the rest of the book, because the idea is he's being haunted by this in his dreams and whatnot. Anyway,
Also, just in terms of the idea of visual literacy, the lack of panel border of any kind between the two heads of the same character, and I have this very clear memory of being like 8 or 9 years old and reading a Dave Berg Lighter Side of, where it was very simple. It was just like a character's head in profile talking to somebody off screen, off panel, 4 in a row, same exact thing, but didn't use panel borders. And I remember saying, are these 4 identical people talking to
Are
the
these
back of each
clones?
other's head? And it was like somewhere in that process I figured it out, but it's like that's just like visual literacy.
Yeah.
You know, some people,
Right.
it's all,
Learning the language.
Yeah.
But again,
could-
that's a challenge when you figure out a cool way to break the language or to stretch it out. You're always toying with that point that you don't want to get to, where the reader goes, "I don't understand,"
yeah.
and then they stop being in the story,
Yeah.
and that's always the fine line.
Right.
works well here, though. Okay, let's look at
Yeah.
Benjamin's page.
So I decided to pick a comic
Oh.
that I didn't draw because it'll look better.
Mm.
This is from my more recent book, Grace in Space, and I picked this because I feel like this is a really great example of me and the artist collaborating to do something really interesting together. So that you have your kind of standard juxtaposition where the text on here is a letter that Grace has sent to her mom, who is not there, and she's basically lying, like, "Oh, I'm having a great time at summer camp," like type letter, when in fact, like, she's had a really hard time and she just doesn't want her mom to worry about her. So this is her sort of telling her, like, "Oh, I did this really cool thing, this is great, I'm having a great time," where she's now with her other mom, her ba. And very briefly, what has happened in this book is that Grace and her ba are having a bad time. They are at odds in this part of the story. These 2 other children you see in the second panel are kids that Grace had met and befriended, and then basically got in trouble and now like can't really hang. And she's sort of embarrassed to go talk to them. And what I like about this page is that you don't really talk, like, in none of the dialogue, like, it's not really in the text of this book that in this particular moment Grace is simultaneously like she never talks about being embarrassed to talk to these kids. It had to be completely communicated visually that she sees them, and then you see her like hide from them. And I think it's very clear that's what's happening on the page, but that kind of is very subtle acting that I think Reed did a really fantastic job with on the page. And also the fact that she's sort of simultaneously hiding behind her ba, looks really miserable, and this is both because she's embarrassed about having seen these kids. She also hates that this is the parent who's with her that she's having to rely on right now. Like, they are not getting along at this moment in this paper, but it's all that she has. And you can see that her ba is like, does not know what to do here because she's not a good parent. She's like kind of the bad dad of this book and is mostly absent. So she's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing right now. I thought that you were mad at me and now you're hiding behind me. And I just think it's like I really, really love comics writing where I'm basically trusting the artist to communicate something that's actually very subtle and complicated on the page. And I'm like, I believe in your ability I'm going to write like a giant paragraph of text about what's going on here. And I'm believing your ability to like actually do this. And I think that Reed did a really fantastic job here. Like, I just feel like this page communicates a lot. And none of what's happening visually on the page has anything to do with the text. And the text is separately addressing the degree to which Grace is hiding this very complicated landscape that she's having from her other parent. So it's what I liked about this page, is why I chose it.
I also really like about sort of what's like the intentional withholding of detail on the first and third panel.
Yeah.
Like, there's not really like a background, whatever. Which
I love it when cartoonists don't draw a background.
Yeah, I love it
it.
too. Like from an economical point of view, but also for really like allowing us to focus and realize like, oh, this is we don't care about the outside world necessarily. We are thinking about what's happening emotionally, and we want the reader to like really read their faces.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we see that Reed does not have like an inability to draw background because the second panel like exists and is gorgeous and has its own intention
And she draws a
purpose.
lot of very elaborate backgrounds in this
Yes,
book. Right? Yeah.
absolutely. But I think there's just such a beautiful intention in highlighting the expression in 1 and 2. They're just such
And I think
gorgeous,
that and the colors
subtle.
that she chose,
Yeah.
like the spot of this, I feel like there's like a little bit, it controls the emotion of those moments a little bit. There's like the
Yes.
brightness of recognition, and then this kind of more muted color of like she's hiding. It's more subdued. It's subtle, but I do think it all adds to like.
Yes. Also, this is a very manga thing, but I love how
No,
just
yeah.
this ponytail is like how it's implied, like the amount of strands and thickness and volume of it, but like the artist only really needed to knock out like those gaps to show like the fullness of that hair. And I'm like, that only took them like probably 10 seconds, and I
But
love it.
years to get
Yes.
good enough to do it that
I
way,
know.
which I love that.
It's
yeah.
believable hair in like 3 lines.
I know,
We
it's
love
so
it.
great.
Yeah, I think that the subtlety of all of this like complicated emotion and like difficult balance of the relationship between the ba and like the main character and like the text overlay, and really thinking about like the shift in, like Gideon was talking about, like perspective, and so like having the ba be in the foreground and be the largest thing, and then for the main character to like recede and shrink and sort of hide behind, and then the inverse of that at the top of the page really implies that shift of dynamic, of comfort, of emotion again, like really
Like
feeling
she
it.
feels smaller in that
Yes.
last page. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that that's really fantastic too. Very cool.
It's like a shift of point of view from one character to the other without, being a subjective point of view.
Yeah, the angle is like slightly low in the first one and
Yeah.
slightly above in the third one. Again, like indicating the two.
Yeah. Okay. I hate to whip through
No,
these
we gotta
things
go. We gotta
Yeah.
so fast,
We got
but
comics
yeah.
to talk about.
Okay.
Okay.
I
Arielle's choice.
adore Rumiko Takahashi sensei. Like, okay. So this reads right to left manga style.
Oh,
Okay. So what I love about this is that this is maybe the second and third page of volume 1, which is probably the comic issue of anything that I have read the most of cover to cover, back to back, because of middle school. Okay, so what I love about this is, okay, 2 concepts. The first one is Rumiko Takahashi is such a master of flow, where she just like leads your eye to where it needs to go to the next panel immediately, just from the diagonals, from the what's happening in the perspective of each panel, from like even like the person, like she uses the people's bodies to point things to other things, and then it just works as a whole, as a spread. If I had like a marker right now, I would like show you exactly the flow, because if you buy this volume, you could see it in basically every page, and it's wild how she's able to do that, and it still makes sense and says something about each character. So the second thing is that I am obsessed with looking at intro pages of stuff, or like first volumes of stuff, because I'm like, okay, she's setting up the world, she introduces like 5 people in this entire spread, and then you like understand so much immediately about who they all are just based off of like the second snapshot we see. So we see the first sister, Kasumi, is in the kitchen. We see like how she's styled. She goes like, "Yes, father." You get the sense of her personality versus like the second sister, who is like on her bed eating chips, vibing, being an icon. And then you see on the following page Akane, who is bigger than everyone else, so you must understand that, okay, she's more important. Not only is she bigger, we have like 4 panels dedicated to her routine of her coming back home. So I just think this is so economical in giving us so much information about this world. Yeah, I think it's great. She's phenomenal. We love Rumiko Takahashi. Okay.
I love on the left page this series of like sound effects, whoosh, shunk, clonk, like of like getting ready for, I assume, doing some dojo, like being at the dojo.
You got the concrete blocks.
Yeah.
Nice
the
page turn preview there.
Yeah, it's really great. And then like, I don't know, I love the second sister vibing in like her room and like all the cool stuff she's got. She's reading a manga. Like she's like, what?
Yeah, and so you immediately see like how the three sisters differ like right away, like even from the set designs too. It's so much.
Also,
so
very
much.
manga is how extremely seasonality is like very present here. It's like you've got the I assume cicadas, the reap reaping. You've got the watermelon, you've got the popsicle, you've got like it just feels very immediately summery and puts you in a place and time like really efficiently.
Oh,
It's
totally.
Even though it's black and white, the balance of gray tones really feels very colorful, especially like the atmospheric perspective and the trees you see through that doorway, like the amount of space that you feel going through that doorway because of the way that the trees are done in that very soft gray. And then also similar the way the little bits of foliage that we see in the middle panel over here.
Do you know if
Very
these pages
delicate.
were originally in color or not?
Oh, I don't know, but that is a good point because some of
I mean, it works
Ranma,
great in black and white.
Yeah,
looks
some of
like
Ranma, the first pages of each
Yeah.
volume can be in color,
Really
but I'm
color,
not sure about this.
Well, I'm sorry to break this up, but speaking of color and
Yes.
flow
Woo.
and all those things, here
Okay,
is-
so this is from my comic, my mini comic, Just a Spell, which I think I still have some copies of at my table. Just shameless plugging. Hello. Okay, so this is an intro also, where I only had 27 pages for this comic because I needed to make a deadline. So I was like, okay, I need to introduce this world. It is like a world where magic exists. I need to introduce this character, and I kind of want to introduce like this idea of this magic system. But I was like, okay, those are like things that I need to show. How do I like check all those things off, but also make it make sense and also make it like beautiful and lovely. I also do want to credit my letterer, Joe Gill, on this, who lettered it based off of like a flow that I had sent her, and then my colorist, Jade Ayatkasi, who like killed it.
Oh, the color's incredible.
Killed it.
So good.
Absolutely killed it. So so Jade and she helped edit me on this too. We were talking about this scene as it appeared in the script, which is in the script, it is a bit of like in Mean Girls, a Regina George moment where Regina gets introduced by people talking about her. I had originally like tried to sort of panel it like that, where we see like several people talking, like just shot. And that was, I was like immediately like, this is so boring. This is not getting what I want from it. And then we talked about how it would be cool if this spread felt very celebratory, almost fashion magazine, to sort of emphasize like who this character is. She is a celebrity in this world, and I think I had directed Joe Met to letter The Most Powerful Witch in a Generation after kind of like Japanese magazine titles, just so that it kind of seems like you're looking at a spread of information about her, while also kind of simultaneously learning about the world and how she relates to the world, how people think about her, etc., etc. And then also I wanted it to flow in a nice way per Rumiko Takahashi, but we'll see if I did that. So
I love the like negative space that ends up being these kind of like magical wisp gutters that help indicate like if you were to break them up, we've got these, like, her at the epicenter, both in this, like, transformative sword magical girl pose, but also like the mwah kind of like face, and like it like is the epicenter of all of these like little negative wisps that also help break up these individual moments. That's so smart and so cool.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I love how every figure, even the smallest ones, are fully animated and fully expressive, which, I don't know, working with students, I see a lot of stuff, especially when people do crowd scenes where the smaller figures really end up very cookie cutter, and they don't think about that everyone in the scene needs to be participating, and everyone here is fully participating.
You're also being very smart about facial expressions and body language, and that the smaller characters are like doing more theater acting, if that makes any sense, like a little broader so that it reads despite them being smaller on the page, which I think is very smart. Good silhouettes too. Especially like in the food truck, like it's just, it reads very clearly. This page done poorly would just be like incomprehensibly busy, but I think you're just very smart in having everything be very clean despite how much is going on.
We did a panel last year called Maximalism, Minimalism, Contrasting Styles. And
This is definitely maximal.
This is such a great, there's different kinds of maximalism, and this is definitely like the sparkly, flowy, juicy one.
Also, I'm not sure this is the right word, but I love how like her being so big on this very busy page almost like implies something about her as a person. Like, look, she takes up a lot of room. Like, she's a big personality. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like there's like a subtle undertone to the
wink.
fact that she's making, especially making this face, that she's taking up so much real estate on a page that like would be like, you know what I mean? Because like the fact that there's like clearly a lot that has to happen on this page, and she's unconcerned.
Well, because it's all about her.
She's taking up
Take it
space.
over.
She's a lady who's not afraid to take up space, and I love that
hell
for
yeah.
her.
Yes.
Absolutely. And also, not every page in this comic is as detailed as this, but I do think that when you pull and choose when to do this, it should be very like narratively intentional.
Well, otherwise it gets exhausting. Like every page can't be like this.
And then my wrist dies, and then we don't want any of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, totally.
This panel goes so fast. we don't have time really for Q&A, so you're just going to have to go to all those tables and ask each artist.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
moderating.
Yeah,
I
Thank
was
you,
fun.
Dan.
That was a blast.
Great.
Yeah.
I had so much fun. Wait, can we take a photo?
Yes,
together?
please. Yes, please.
Oh,
Can
yeah,
we take
yeah,
a selfie?
Yeah.